You have to have a heart that beats first in order for your senses to wake up. So what makes the heart beat then? What makes your digestive system work? It can't be you, because it is the prerequisite for your existence. So it's actually the multidimensional laws of the universe in what you call the subconscious level that regulate the pulses of life in your body. So your heart is actually governed by the universe, not by you.
Hey, Guy here. Today, I welcome back to the podcast Dr. Ibrahim Karim, the founder of BioGeometry. In my eyes, anyway, he is an absolute legend and a beautiful human being. If you want to find out all about biogeometry and how it can support you in your home and your own personal body, your resonance of the subtle energy level, I've recorded 2 previous podcasts, one with Dr. Karim and one with his daughter, Doria. So if you look back in the archives on YouTube or Spotify and search their names, you'll find it. And we go into some deep topics. Today, I invited Dr. Ibrahim Karim back to the podcast, and we get into a very light topic on the mechanics of the universe, basically our interaction with the universe and life beyond our 5 senses. That's all I can explain. Now, this is a deep podcast. I'm not going to lie. This is one that I would recommend listening to while going for a walk, taking your time, really taking in the content that he says. Loved it today. And honestly, I sat back and listened today. One thing I want people to appreciate when I'm conducting podcasts and interviews is that online recording a podcast is very different to being in person because there's this separation. And with the software I was using at this particular time, there was lag when recording. Now, the end product, and when you listen to it, you will never know the difference because it's edited and stitched together beautifully. But when recording, because of that lag, it was I struggled to create the conversations that I wanted to do for this particular episode. So with his wisdom and knowledge, I sat back and allowed him to talk. So I don't speak so much in this particular podcast, but now you know the reasons why. And to be honest with you, I want to create a space to allow this kind of wisdom to flow out anyway, because what he has to say is revolutionary, life-changing stuff if you take it on board. Anyway, if you want to find out more about biogeometry, you can head back to their website. And also, if you want to find out more about biogeometry and purchasing their products within Australia and New Zealand, come back to livingflow.co, as we are the biogeometry distributors here and use it a lot. Anyway, I've been talking a lot. Let's go over Dr. Ibrahim Karim. I certainly hope to meet you in person some stage, somewhere in the world at one of our retreats. We are going to be in Bali in June, July 24, and we are going to be in Croatia towards the end of the year in October as well. Come along. You won't regret it. They're powerful. Anyway, much love from me, and see you soon. Ibrahim, welcome back to the podcast. It's so lovely to have you back, sir.
It's my pleasure being with you. It's been a long time.
It has. And time goes very quickly in this linear dimension, I must say. I have your book, your Hidden Reality. And
yes,
the depth of knowledge that you seem to share continues to blow my mind. And I invited you to come on the podcast today to have a discussion, about reality and what is hidden about it, because we were talking off air a little bit earlier about my own spiritual awakening and how my perception has changed around reality, especially over the last 10 years. And I'd love to know from your perspective how you, through all your wisdom and experience, what have you learned about reality and its perception and, I guess, life and death and beliefs? The floor is yours.
First of all, I'd like to point out that the book Hidden Reality is quite big and people were having some trouble understanding it. They have to read and reread. So we started book reviews, we did 3 videos till now, and we're going to continue with the rest of the book in the coming period. So you will explain, discuss, and all that. So this will help people go through the book. But now, if we want to understand reality, then we have to start with some basic, let's say, definitions of the 2 realities we're living with. Because we are sort of living with 2 souls inside us. We're living with what we can call a sensory soul. And the sensory soul, some people refer to it as the mortal soul. And then we have the extrasensory soul, and that is the immortal soul, you see. Now, I'm going to explain to you how those 2 got separated in modern humanity, because it wasn't always the case. I mean, in all creatures in nature, the 2 souls are very much connected. I mean, they form one homogeneous soul containing both of them. In modern humanity, we have the problem of separation between the 2 souls, and that means we have 2 realities to deal with. Well, the 2 realities exist at the same time, but our sensory perception limits us to one reality, making it easier to deal with this one reality. So, but to understand this difference of both realities, first of all, how do we perceive our world or our reality? Well, we know basically, I won't go too deep into this, but just a few words about it. Our sensory perception takes its information from about 1% or 2% maximum of all the ranges from 0 to infinity of absolute reality. So our sensory perception is very, very limited. Now, the information of the senses goes into certain brain locations that give it first some qualitative scales. What do I mean by qualitative scales? It goes in the visual cortex at the back of the head, for example, and then the energy fluctuation in the nerve due to the sensory impact is coded in color. So excitement gives you red, calming gives you blue, let's say, and in the middle you have green. So this is sort of a translation of sensory effect into a color code. Same thing with the ears, translation of another sensory effect into what sound goes, like notes and all that, musical notes. And for example, your touch, your sense of touch will go into another area where you have rough and smooth and so on. So you smell it the same thing. So those sensory perceptions, for example, they have to somehow construct your reality in the brain and actually not only construct it, but they have to construct it, project it, and materialize it in front of you. Now, here you'd think, how do I materialize the world outside? Well, it's very simple. If you didn't have a sense of touch, you wouldn't have a material world, because the sense of touch makes you sense something solid. Now, I'll give you a little exercise that you can do to understand the sense of touch. If you move your hand on a surface in front of you, or on the table, let's say, and you move your hand this way, you see, or on any surface that way, you move your fingers. Now, think of different things. Think of a very happy moment and think of a very, very disturbing moment in your life. Or think of something that's good for you or something that's harmful for you. Then, while you do the thinking, while slowly moving your hand over the surface with the same amount of pressure, you will find that with every thought, the sort of stickiness or rough and smooth will start to change under your fingers. Sometimes you find it getting stickier or getting smoother. If you concentrate on that, there are actually some radionic devices, the radionic devices, in order to assess the impact of energy on your body, that use this principle. They get a sort of they have a pad like that on which they stretch a leather skin on it, just like a drum surface in an apparatus, and you put your finger on it and keep sliding your finger on it while measuring different things. And it's the stickiness on the pad that gives you an idea of the quality of energy that your body is interacting with. So even what you think is 100% material, your interaction with it is a sensory perception, you see. Now, we get all those senses, and how do you project that on the exterior world? I mean, how can I say the world outside, I'm the one making it? It's a bit difficult to visualize. We might think we live in it, but making it is quite a big assumption, Yeah. So let's look at it a bit differently. First of all, we have to discard the scientific notion that what is out there beyond the material is a void, a vacuum, This was part of science. They look at what's out there as empty space, as a vacuum, but it is not. Today, they're slowly discovering things in this background, like dark matter, dark energy, and things like that, that will have to make them change their mind. And we have to understand that the background energy of the universe is actually an energetic medium. It's a highly energetic medium that contains so many things that are actually outside our perception. In the physics of quality of biogeometry, we actually, like we said, we deal with the 2% only. So we know the 2%, but because we only know the 2% or perceive the 2%, we have decided that the other 98% are nothing, are a void. So, see, this is an assumption from our feeble minds, but in reality, the rest is not void at all. So just imagine a bottle full of sand of all possible colors, and you mix it well like that, and you look at it. You won't see colors. You'll find a gray mass in front of you like that contains all colors. So it will be like everything and nothing in the bottle. Now, if you wear glasses that have one color, just have a certain color, and you look at the bottle, let's say you wear glasses that are green in color, all of a sudden you will perceive only the green grains of sand in the bottle. So all of a sudden a pattern emerges. Your brain interacts with the order of the green parts and arranges them into a pattern that you perceive. So you are imposing the pattern and the color, because that's from your brain. You're imposing both of that on what is exactly everything in the bottle. So it's like projecting a picture on a background, on a screen. So the screen is the absolute thing that contains all colors. The green particles is actually the world that you perceive. So you're projecting your perceived reality on a background of absolute reality. Now, your senses cannot perceive the absolute reality. They just perceive what you have materialized out of it. So you perceive colors, sounds, and touch and all that. And that is how you materialize your world, a sort of a form, a world that has form out of that's. So you are creating, you are forming a reality, a world from or projected on a formless background medium. So that's how we form our reality, from this 1%. Okay, this is a basic way of projecting reality that we have explained many times before, but let me take you a bit deeper in there to make it more exciting, okay? So, yeah, we can't stay on the shore like that. We have to dive into the waters together. So, if we play a part in making this world that we live in, we are making it with the information in this limited range of our senses. Now, imagine other species living on Earth with us, living in this same world, but their sensory ranges are different than ours. For example, viruses have a different sensory range than ours. They perceive a totally different world and interact with it. To them, their world is material. Now, animals, for example, if you take your dog or cat, they have their perception. Part of it is common with us, but part of it is a bit shifted. So they don't see all the colors and all that we see. They might see less color, but then they, on the other side, they see more of what is to us is invisible. But if their senses are shifted, that means that in the construction and projection of their world, they will have less information on one side and more information on the other side. So all of a sudden, animals will have a different world than ours. Although they live with us in this same world, they are living with us in part of our material world, but they are moving in a wider material world that we can't imagine. For example, an entity could be visible to them, an angel or some other entity, a spiritual entity or a nature spirit or something like that. Now, to them, those entities will be material because it is within their sensory perception. So they'll actually be able to interact with those entities just as they're interacting with us, you see. So that means that with so many different species, you will have many superimposed, like this, material realities. All of them are material, but they're so superimposed on each other. Now, it is our sensory data or range that differentiates them from each other. So each species reacts with one of those worlds, and then it becomes the solid material world of that species, while the others are superimposed on it, but are not perceived by the species. So maybe some species are living in material world number 1, the others are living in number 3, the others in number 7, and all that. All those material worlds are superimposed, but they're not material to every species. Every species materializes one world, one of those worlds, you see, that are there.
Can I ask you a question on
Yes,
on
it's
that?
a difficult notion of it, you know.
No, it's amazing. And when, let's say, you would take the dog or the cat, for instance, and you're talking about their band of perception or whatever might be ranging in a different range to us humans. So then there becomes the layered materialization of their reality.
Yes.
And does that mean what we can't see in our band of perception, but for different species, there's different layers of perception that's materializing? Does that mean they could physically walk into something or experience it through their senses that seems physical or material to them, but we can't even see it on our band of perception of reality?
Yes. First, there is no, they don't step outside the material world that we live in. No, it is extended. So
okay.
It's extended a bit so they can just walk into the other dimensions. Now, there's a very interesting part here when we discuss their dimensions from ours. We live in this limited sensory world, and then we have the extrasensory dimension is totally unperceived. It's in the subconscious. But that is because the focus of perception in the brain has moved totally in the left brain mode, in this analytical left brain mode. Okay, it wasn't always like that. If we take Jung's categorization of humanity, for example, Carl Gustav Jung, the Swiss psychologist, he categorized humanity based on the shift in perception. He didn't categorize humanity by shape, for example. How can you categorize humanity by shape like we do? Today we find human remains that are 3 million years old. Sometimes, maybe soon we will be able to discover something that's 100 million years old. But we know that humans, or the Adamic race, is here only maybe 10,000 years, something like this. So how can we reconcile those two things? How can humans have been living here for millions of years, and then at the same time, in our beliefs, we believe that the Adamic race has been here only a small fraction of those years. So that means you cannot differentiate the what we call the modern human race or the Adamic race from other races just by analyzing the physical remains or the body. You see, it's just like you think that all the drivers of a certain car make are the same. You can't say that. Yeah, you could have a young man, an old man, a woman, or something. Having the same car make doesn't mean you have the same driver. So this is the same thing with the human body. Having human bodies for millions of years doesn't mean that the driver inside has always been the same, you see. Maybe the Adamic race is a driver that came in at a late stage, and before there was another type of driver in there. So now, what characterizes the beginning of our modern human race or the Adamic race? What characterizes it is the shift of consciousness into the left brain and completely closing the door to the right brain. Now, to understand what this means, let's go a bit earlier and start with animals, for example. Animals have a brain where the shift of consciousness is still in the right brain. You see, this is the focus of consciousness It's moving slowly. They're slowly developing a left brain, but not developing left brain from the physical point of view, from the perception point of view. They're slowly developing the analytical sensory perception. It started getting more developed, but not developed enough to create a separate identity. They are still connected to the subconscious. That's why they are part of a collective identity, what we sometimes call the herd mind or something like this. So it's a collective identity of the animals. So in this, combining both worlds means that the laws of nature are part of their perception. But in the case of animals, their individual perception is not strong enough to create a separate identity where they can feel, I am here and the laws of nature are there. So they live in the laws of nature in a collective aspect. So they're just being driven by the laws of nature. So the animals, the laws of nature actually are the main decision makers in the animal life. Now, as humanity, primitive humanity starts there, just like the animal. So then slowly, the focus of perception moves towards the left brain. It's moving towards it. Why? Because humanity is slowly interacting with physical things. They are developing tools, they are developing things, so that their faculty of identification and interaction actually is slowly pulling the focus towards the left brain, but it's still in the right brain. So there comes a time when humanity starts developing an identity that's still not very strong, because the focus is not totally there. It can't be very strong because the door to the right brain, to the subconscious, is still open. So the subconscious control still controls the ancient humans, you see. But they have developed enough of an identity that allows personification of things. So left brain perception here has personification as one of its tools to separate itself from the surroundings. So all of a sudden now humanity starts to think individually and not collectively like the animal. And when you start thinking individually, but you are still not separated from the right brain consciousness. So what happens? Humanity at that stage can actually look into the other world, into the subconscious world. The door is open. And by looking into it with their sensory perception, they can actually materialize so many other dimensions in that other world. That's why if you want to go in the brains of the early humans, you shouldn't go with the same way of thinking like modern humanity does. You shouldn't use left brain thinking alone, because those humans, they actually materialized many of the entities and information and all that in the right brain. That means in the collective area, they materialized those. So many of the things that you see in ancient art or statues or things like that, of things today we call them ancient gods, we call them things like that, or we refer to them as aliens and all that. It wasn't like that. It was humanity materializing and interacting with the unconscious realm. The door was open. And by doing that, they opened a doorway so that entities actually from the collective unconscious, could actually interact with them in their everyday world. So they drew things that they actually interacted with. And that explains when some people say some fallen angels came at some time and lived with humans, and they intermarried with humans and things like that. That was the time that actually there was no barrier between the two worlds. You see, they could come. And then what happened later was that the shift, when it became complete, the door closed. So the senses were limited again to the 1%. Before, they were not limited. They could go into the subconscious. But here, there's a very tricky situation to understand for us. The left brain perception is trapped or bound in linear time, because your senses create time and space. So actually what they're doing is creating a linear axis, or perceiving a linear axis from the otherwise total spherical time in the universe, because time is a pulse, pulsating, the pulse of creation, the pulse of duality. This is the law of time acting. Now, the pulse of duality is multidimensional. It goes in all directions. So imagine in this spherical pulse, if you take one diameter inside the pulse, you have a linear motion.
Yes.
So imagine your senses, your physical senses, are interacting with one of the diameters of the totality. That's the color you have created out of the colorless background of the sand grains. So now you have chosen a diameter within the sphere, and you live in that diameter with your perception, and this is your linear perception, the time you live in. This is all well and done today in our way of perception. We live in it. So we're not aware of the other spherical aspects of time, because they're in the subconscious, so we're not aware of them. But if we go earlier, where the door was open, and you could perceive into the subconscious, you had a complete different world. You could perceive the diameter, but also some of the time aspects around it in the sphere. So it wasn't spherical time and linear time here were mixed in certain percentages depending on the development of the left brain. The more the left brain develops, the more you see of the linearity and the less you see of the universality. But you should see that other species, when I say they create their world, it's a world of mixed time and space constructs combined together. Our time-space construct is very simple, it's linear. But for earlier humanity and for animals and things like that, it's not exactly linear. It's linear time interwoven in one way or another with spherical time. So a dog, for example, has no problem perceiving future and past and things like that. You see, to the dog, it's all now. So the dog can see what will happen to you actually in tomorrow or after tomorrow. To the dog, it's all an eternal present, and that's why animals sometimes can warn you and they can help you and things like that, because they live in both worlds at the same time. Now, we, humanity, are trapped in linear time. The problem of being here in linear time, the laws that govern linear time are different than the laws that govern spherical time. So the conscious mind, or the sensory conscious mind, works with completely different criteria than the subconscious, because now these are linear criteria. What are the main criteria of linear time and space? First, you have cause and effect, of course, because it's linear. When you do something at this point, then it's affected by the other point. And so you only see the relationship of time-space. You're only aware of time moving forwards. Although even the diameter that you're interacting with is part of the pulse. So even this diameter, it goes in and out. So the beginning and end are interconnected. They come out of each other and come back to each other. But you only perceive one direction going forward, and the other direction going backwards to the center of the pulse, you don't perceive that. So it's an emotional path going from outside to the inside. You don't perceive, you only perceive the mental reflection going outside, So This is our perception, and it creates a world where everything in this world has to follow this linearity, cause and effect. So in this world, or in this 1%, because of time, linear time, things grow. They have a beginning and an end. They grow from small to big, or they grow from young to old. Everything has a beginning and an end. But that is only because of linear time. This relationship of linearity doesn't exist in the subconscious, for example. So this notion of aging, this notion of developing, this notion of yesterday and tomorrow is only an aspect of perceived sensory time. It does not exist in absolute time. Because once you have a spherical motion in all direction, there is no cause and effect here. Where will you're moving multidimensional in all directions at the same time. There's no present, past, future, and all that. In your subconscious, it's all one. So here, linear time has its own linear laws that we live in. Now, as the door has been closed in modern humanity between the conscious and the subconscious, there's a total separation of the two times. Linearity has become linearity. The other aspect of spherical time in the subconscious is there, but we don't see it. But the reality of information cannot be the same in both aspects. Any type of information in spherical reality that doesn't have the linear information, doesn't have a beginning and an end, for example, doesn't have directionality, doesn't have all that, it's a totally different world than here. It's a world where you can't say, when you move there, and we will move there, when your perception moves there, all of a sudden, you can be young and old at the same time. You can change from any aspect depending on what you want to perceive. There is no linearity governing your movement in space or time. You can move in time and you can move in space. That is why we are so eager to develop time travel in our perceived reality, because it already exists in our subconscious. We are moving through time all the time. You see, it's a normal thing in your dreams. You can go forward and backwards. It's no problem at all. Now, now, all what I'm saying until now is preparing for our actual talk. This is the groundwork that I'm going to use to discuss things. So we have now two different sets of time space. You cannot translate from one into the other. Any information in this global, universal realm of the subconscious has to be somehow put in a way, in order to go through the doorway to our perception. It has to have different criteria. So it has to be time stamped into linearity. You have to, and it has to be space allocated in this linearity. So there's a translation. And then the left brain will not even perceive it as an image if it cannot personify the information into an entity. You have to personify an information to understand it. How do you personify an information? Is by taking this information and associating it with the content of your sensory database that has the meanings of everything in your life. That's your soul today. So this is your cultural content in the database. So you take it, this information, and find the nearest thing to it by association, and then it gets translated into our understanding. Now, it has been personified, it has been given a name, it has been given meaning, it's been given that, but all those are criteria that are superimposed in order to adapt it to our linear time space. So you imagine information being translated that way is totally different from its origin. First of all, it fits in a certain time. Now, the same information that you fit in the moment you fit it in a certain time here, there is going backwards and forwards, end and beginning. So, but you don't see the future of that event. And the problem is when you don't see where you're going, because you're not in spherical time, you're in linear time, then fear creeps in. This fear doesn't exist if you don't have linear time. This cause and effect doesn't exist if you don't have linear time. All those are things that actually color your life. So the first fear that you experience is the fear of death. Because I'm going, where am I going? You don't know that the other immortal soul that has separated because the door closed in modern humanity from you is already there. It knows, is already living there. So it's wrong to speak of the afterlife as if it's a life you're going to after this life. Or do we have a life after this one? No, you should speak of the other life. That because since it has no time space like us, you cannot apply your time space criteria to it, thinking of after or before. The other life is like an ocean, and there's a leaf that fell on the top of the ocean and it's just floating on the ocean. So when you're sitting on that leaf, you only see the leaf itself and how it's moving, and you don't know where the ocean is taking it. So this is your linearity. But the leaf, you are already on the ocean anyhow, but you don't know, because when you look under your feet, you see the leaf. You don't see the water. Now, slowly, the leaf gathers water, and then you start sinking into the ocean. But you've always been on the ocean anyhow. You've never left the ocean. You are just looking at under your feet at the leaf. If you just look a bit on the side, right or left, you'd have seen where you really are, in the ocean. You see? And that's the afterlife. The afterlife is where you've always been there, and that's the ocean. It's not because a leaf fell on your head and you sort of jumped on it to see what's happening there, that this becomes a permanent you. This just becomes a linear situation. Now, the immortal soul, because it doesn't have linear time, it's immortal. Linear means mortal, beginning and end. But spherical takes you into multidimensionality. So not only in this dimension, but in so many other, in all the dimensions of the 98% of reality. So the pulse in all dimensions is sort of like a musical note resonating in all the dimensions of existence. So your mortal soul inside you is actually in resonance with everything in the 98% of existence. You should look at it like that. You are a multidimensional human being. If you could only just open the door a bit and have a peep into your unconscious or subconscious, you would see the multidimensionality of the universe as the real you. There's no hurry. I mean, the day you close your eyes here with the senses, you'll be there anyhow. But when you'll be there, you won't have the feeling you moved from here to there. No, you've always been there anyhow. It's just for a brief moment in your life, you looked outside the window at a tree out there, and then you look back. You've been in the room the whole time. See? So this is the way you interact with this other dimension. But then what happens? How can this other or multiple dimensions of non-linear time, where the whole universe is one and one interactive unity, everything is part of that unity, how do I move in there? Since time is fluid and space is fluid. So if time is fluid means that past, present, and future are all the same. You're in one big information thing. You can look like you were here in this earth. You have a book of pictures of your life from the day you were born till the day you die in a book. You just go through the pages of the book and you see the relationship. Now, if you take the binding off, throw the pictures haphazardly on the floor, nothing is connecting them anymore. No time, space, or anything. You can actually take any picture and look at it. So there is the same thing. You can be in any situation at any moment, past, future, or present. It's all one big interactive thing. And then you interact with every picture. Now, going future and past would be, you have an eternal, everything is eternally present. But what about space? Space becomes here a bit different. Every picture in your life that you have on the floor has its own space. So actually, you can be part. The moment you think of a space, you're part of it. So you're part of this space, and that space. So imagine with no space boundaries, there are no identity boundaries. So you can have multiple copies of yourself in the different spaces. You can have multiple copies of yourself all over the universe. Now you're not aware of them. You think of the only one guy who's speaking to one Ibrahim, and that's all that exists. You don't know that there are millions of other guys and millions of other Ibrahim interacting in different ways. And maybe some of them through their interaction, they're a bit different. They are not all the same, not the same age, nor the same way they are and everything. So this is a world. You have a spherical time-space, and in the spherical time-space, you can actually be individual, you can act as an individual, or collective as a group, as a species, or as a universal being, because there's no linear time-space. Now, it's very difficult to understand how can my consciousness become universal. Where am I? It's a totally different criteria, you see. And by understanding that the two dimensions have completely different sets of laws, we have a problem here. How do I explain information from the universal dimension, from the subconscious, to a limited linear mind? You have to use what you have at hand in the linear mind, you see. So, and when you try to explain to the linear mind things that are beyond the physical, you only have the left brain time-space causality to explain it, because otherwise the mind will not understand it. That's no problem if you're explaining things in your physical reality. But now when you start to explain things on the other dimension with cause and effect, when it doesn't exist over there, this is where the problems begin. So you start saying, I do something here, and then I pay for it later on, or I pay for it in the afterlife. Okay, when you say I did something now, and I'm paying for it in this life, okay, you can look at it that way. Causality within this life, within your time and space, exists. So actions and reactions here are normal. You can analyze things in action and reaction. But don't try to go with this way of thinking into the other dimension and start applying cause and effect where it does not exist. There it does not exist. There are all the laws you know here don't exist anymore there. What is the law that's universal? Some laws must be universal because we are part of the other. So some of the laws there must exist here. So the law of resonance, multidimensional resonance, exists in the other dimension as well as within our time and space. So you should think an action here will have a resonant effect on the other side. But the resonant effect on the other side will be stripped of all the time-space criteria before it crosses over. You see? So that's the difference. So when you speak about life after death, don't worry, you're already there. Now the problem is the animal is aware of that because the animal is living in both at the same time. So the concept of fear of death that you think an animal would have doesn't exist in the animal world or in the bird world. You are imposing your way of thinking on the animal. Because first of all, let's take it space and time separately. The animal is part of a species. His identity is a collective identity. So on a physical level, losing one part of the species is just like having a basket full of fruits and then one of the fruits falls off. It's not like being here, having one orange in your hand and losing it. No, there, a small part falls off, so what? Other parts are coming in. So the animal here, to the animal who is already living 1 foot in linear time and the other foot in multidimensional time, he is living in both at the same time, you see. So for the animal, going out of this room to the next room is not a big thing emotionally, because he has always been there. He's been moving, going between the two rooms all the time, you see. So imagine now a butterfly. A worm transforms into butterfly.
Yeah.
You think that there is here, the worm is afraid to die? But because the worm, as another species, is not limited to linear time, the worm sees the world of the butterfly, and the butterfly sees the world of the worm. So it's like seeing the next room and this. So just moving from one thing to another is natural. So that's why you cannot compare life and death in nature. This is part of the divine law governing nature. You cannot compare that to all the killing we do in our lives and say that this is natural. No, this is a totally different story. You see? So you cannot compare those two together. Now, and when an animal dies, you're very sad because the animal's gone away and your lifelong dog friend has left you. In reality, the dog has never left you. It walks into your dimension in and out, although you don't see it. It has always been there. It just lost the physical part, but the rest is always there. So being on the other side is a natural thing. You're there all the time. And that is your mortal soul. Imagine living in an apartment where you have a mate living with you, 2 persons living in an apartment. In ancient times, they used to sit together, they used to speak together and eat together and all that. But one lived in a room with facing one side, has a certain view, and the other, his room faced the other side. But they could come and sit together and interact. So there was no problem between both of them. Each one would tell the other what he sees. Now, you decide, no, the two have decided not to speak to each other. So each one goes in his room, closes the door, doesn't want to sit with the other guy. And that's the modern situation, you see. So they don't exchange information. And the thing is, you are looking at yourself as I'm this one and the other guy is closed in the room. You don't know that you are actually a temporary thing here. And soon you will be the other guy because you've been there all the time, you see. So looking at life and death, you should look at it that way. Life is a fantastic opportunity for you to experience actual freedom of action. Because, in a dream, for example, once you move to the other side, you're connected to the laws of nature. So you're part of the natural evolution. Here, you've been given freedom of action to experience this decision-making process that you managed to mess up so much. And it comes a moment when you mess it up so much that you're going to feel the need of going back to this higher order, because there's no way back. You're going to break up everything. So here, this experience of trying to take your own decision is a temporary thing. It is made to teach you. Now, I'll take another example showing you this relationship between spherical time and linear time. If for you to create this world we live in, because now we agreed that it's a projection from our mind. Now, for us to project this world, this physical reality, we have to have functioning senses. If you don't have senses, you can't project reality. You have to have functioning senses. But to have functioning senses, you have to have blood flowing with life force into the brain. That's a prerequisite for your senses to function.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that means that you have to have a living body first. You have to have a heart that beats first in order for your senses to wake up. The senses, this is you, your identity. Okay. But that means your existence, your sensory existence, and the birth of your sensory soul from the universal one is actually a second stage, not a first stage. The first stage is a living heart, a living body that has to revive you or give you blood, So your existence is secondary to the body. Okay? So what makes the heartbeat then? What makes your digestive system work? If it's not, it can't be you. Because it is the prerequisite for your existence. So it's actually the multidimensional laws of the universe in what you call the subconscious level that regulate the pulses of life in your body. So your heart is actually governed by the universe, not by you. The heartbeat is a pulse of the universe. It's a pulse of the laws of nature. So your heartbeat contains all the harmonizing laws of nature. They are functioning in your body. So your body is actually part of the universe. It's not a physical thing. It's part. The universe is working on it before you materialize it. It exists as part of the universe. And to show you that you are part of the universe, you're not alone here. If you don't have an organ that can take the energy of the sun that you need to live, otherwise I wouldn't need to eat. So what we do, the plant kingdom can take the energy of the sun, transform it into chemical energy, and then you take it, gets transformed back into energy for your body. So it's energy, physical, chemical reactions, and then back to energy. So looking at that way, the plant is vital to your life. So the plant is an external organ of your body. So you have your mind exists in a certain time-space dimension. Your body exists or in a universal dimension and is actually not confined to this physical being, because the plant is an external organ of your body out there, you see.
Wow. Yeah.
So you cannot be separate from the plant kingdom. Now, if the universe is running your body, why can't I live forever then? Because if the universe is running my heartbeat, so my heartbeat should be perfect with all the laws of universe. And this perfection should actually lead to immortality, because the laws of the universe are immortal, because the time, space criteria running your heart are not linear. They are spherical, universal. So if your heart is a universal entity, how come it decays and we die? That means that linear time has intruded here, you see. And this is the problem. Once the senses start working, you create linear time. And then when you create linear time, the problem with linear time and the problem of the senses creating Guy and Ibrahim is ultimately we have to serve them. The senses don't give you something for nothing, you know. Nobody gives something for nothing today. They give you something, you have to give back. So the senses will ask you to serve them with time. So now that you have linear space and you become aware of the functioning of your body, when you feed it, when you drink it and all that, all of a sudden, your awareness, your linear perception is interacting with the universality of information running your body. So your linear life, your sensory life is intruding on the universal functioning of everything in your body. So you pull your body into this growth and decay, because now you bring out the universality and you sort of let it be governed by linearity. And this is why we live and we die. Now, let us look at things like that. So when we look at death, for example, we looked at death as before and after, and we said it's simultaneous. There's no before and after. So what about things like reincarnation? Now we have a problem with that, because I think in reincarnation you have multiple lives, one after the other. But if that's only a sensory illusion, you cannot have lives one after another. All history exists in a spherical dimension at the same time. So you have to explain reincarnation the way we do it. You're going to have multiple lives and all, because that's the only way people will understand it. Yeah. Doesn't mean that in reality it's like that. It only means that you're explaining things in a feeble translation way, trapped in time. Now, what's the reality here? The reality here, reincarnation starts here, not from another life before or after. It starts in this life. Now, every time I have an interest in this life, let's say an interest in art, an interest in mathematics, any interest, this interest here creates a sort of resonance with similar interests in the multidimensional time, because everything is there. So let's say I draw. My interest is in art. So I have interest in Leonardo's work and Michelangelo's work, Botticelli's work. All of a sudden, this interest starts a resonance with Leonardo, let's say. So now I'm in resonance with Leonardo. But a resonance where? Where we all exist at the same time, on the subconscious level. Because there, we all exist at the same time. So we have resonance between both of us. But that means that I have drawn through resonance the information of Leonardo into me and sent its two-way street. And I exist now within Leonardo. So reincarnation is not what you think. I exist as much in Leonardo as he exists in me. Now, it's on that level. So he's only affecting me through the aspects of interest between us. Let's say Leonardo, let's say he killed somebody or he stole something. But that is outside the scope of resonance between us, okay? So if it's outside the scope of resonance between us, I cannot take the fact that he killed or that he stole will not affect me in this life, because I resonate with a certain quality of information. I don't resonate with a personality. And that's a big difference. So now my artistic abilities are developing. And then I start having, let's say, mathematical or geometrical interests. So all of a sudden I'm reading about Pythagoras. Same thing happens. So during this life, at every stage of my life, I have those reincarnational information exchange as part of my development in this life. So going from one incarnation into the other, it is not multiple physical lives that I'm going to live. I'm already living all those stages within this physical life. You see? And so I develop, part of me develops through reincarnational information, causing the development of this life. So in this life, I'm actually developing through the lessons from all those, or through the information from all those lives. You see? So this is, my doc has just come in to listen to what we're saying. So I'm patting her. So you see, if I look at reincarnation that way, what I have learned in this life has also contributed to what Leonardo has done, what Pythagoras has done. Now, take that from a purely physical point of view here. We lived in different times. So I was Pythagoras, he was me, and all that. The thing is, information-wise, we are part of each other, but not personality-wise. Because personality is a sensory perception limited to one life. So cause and effect cannot happen between incarnations, because cause and effect is a linear thing. Only the things that don't get lost in transformation to the spherical time can interact between reincarnations, not things here. For example, it's very cruel to say that a handicapped person is paying for something he did in a past life. This is very cruel to say, because there is no such thing as cause and effect between lives. On the subconscious level, doesn't exist. So if we understand spherical time and physical time, whenever we speak about things in the other dimension, we should be very cautious, and we should also understand that all what is out there in the literature about life after death, about reincarnation, about all that, we should understand that all that is a metaphorical interpretation into linear thinking, into linear personification, into linear cause and effect. And once we understand that, the interpretation then of different persons can be different. So there's no need to fight between them. It's just like religion. Religion speaks about what's happening in spherical time. And somebody translates it into the cultural content and time-space aspects of a certain period in a certain place, cultural content. So we end up with different religions, but they're all saying the same thing. It's just different translations. So if I speak Chinese and you speak Indian, then we shouldn't fight each other because we don't speak the same language, you see. It's the meaning behind the words is the same. You see, if I tell you hello in Arabic, it's still hello, you know. So that's the problem when losing this wisdom of understanding the language of the heart, the universal language. When we lose that, this is where all the problems begin. I think now we must have gone over time, huh? Or
we have, but that's okay. I've been captivated the whole time, Ibrahim.
I mean,
really,
it's supposed to be an hour. I went 1 hour, 20 minutes. You know, the problem is, guy, because once I go into spherical time, how can I go into spherical time and be aware of linear time? That's what always happens to me. When I speak in spherical time, all of a sudden, the hour has passed without me noticing it.
And I'm here to absorb in every word, Ibrahim. It's phenomenal. And my wish and my heart is that more and more people will listen to this and really start to explore these concepts and start to come from the heart more, and not just the linear thinking, analytical mind that we seem to be.
You see, what allows us to speak, let's say, about all this in this abstract way is actually the physics of quality within biogeometry. So everything I'm telling you about spherical time and all that is based on measurement, qualitative measurements, because physics of quality is the physics of the 98%, because within the 2%, we have the laws of cause and effect and all that. But within the 98%, you have laws of resonance from 0 to infinity. And a physics of quality that's based on resonance is the best tool for scientific research into all the concepts we're speaking about now. We actually do practical research into every word I've said. We have to go practically into it, do measurements and do things and be able to do that. We have special instruments with which we can measure the hidden dimensions or the hidden worlds around us, or the movement of the soul and all that. We have developed special instruments to measure that even.
I know, and it's phenomenal. And your book, I just want to mention before we wrap up the podcast, is this available for everyone now? Like, this can be purchased and...
Yeah, it's you order it through Amazon, Amazon.com, or you have an Amazon in Australia too. I think you have an Amazon everywhere. So you just order it from Amazon and you'll get it. And very soon I'm writing on a small, I'm writing a new book, a small pocket book like that, going a bit further into some of those aspects that should be out maybe this summer when I have some more time.
Incredible. And one last question before I let you go. Will we ever see you back in Australia?
Maybe. You never know.
Maybe.
Yeah, you know.
That would be wonderful.
I'm jumping around the world so much but maybe sometimes I've never seen Australia, so maybe I should come sometime.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I know you're a man in demand. That's for sure.
But maybe we do something in Egypt and you come and visit us in Egypt.
I would love that.
Yeah, that
very
would
much
be
so.
So we can go together into all the ancient Egyptian monuments, and I'd give you a glimpse of my ancient Egypt, the way I see it.
That would be phenomenal. Absolutely, Farmer. Ibrahim, I will not keep any more of your time. I just want to say thank you so much for your time today.
A pleasure to speak to you.
So, yes, and until the next time, thank you, sir.
Until the next time, and thank you for honoring me with this, being with you in a podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.